The building's locked.
Yeah. Turns out.
You still managed to get in, it didn't work.
I know, it didn't work at all, did it?
Okay, we're gonna get started. Welcome to the Medical Cannabis Policy Advisory Board. This meeting is being held virtually and in person and is hosted by the Utah Department of Health and Human Services in Salt Lake City. Public notice of this meeting was provided on the Utah Public Notice website. This meeting is being recorded. Recording of this meeting will be posted to the Utah Public Notice website no later than 3 business days following the date of this meeting. Every proposed agenda item must have a summary of the topic submitted no later than 7 days prior to the board meeting. Board members will present and discuss the summary. If no written summary is provided to the board, the relevant agenda item will be removed from the agenda. Only items that have been submitted in writing in advance of board meetings will be allowed during the discussion by the board chair. Public comment instructions. Public comments is limited to 2 minutes per person. If you want more time, you may request it from the chair. Please state your name and your affiliation. Only comments made on items listed on the agenda will be considered. I make a comment over Zoom. When the chair opens public comment, use the raise hand icon on Zoom to indicate that you would like to make a comment. When you are called on, you will be taken off the mute. Take 2 minutes to make a comment. To make a comment in person, sign the public comment sign-in sheet with your name and indicate what agenda item you want to make a comment on. The chair will indicate when it is time for public comment and invite you to the table. Take 2 minutes to make your comment. For additional information or to make a suggestion for agenda items or to contact board members or staff, please send an email to dlbcboards@utah.gov. And with that, welcome. Has everybody gotten a chance to look over the April 2026 minutes? Do we want to approve those minutes?
A motion to approve.
Second. I guess let's just, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, those minutes are approved. Administrative business, I think all we have to really talk about is today we're doing the meeting here. I think next month, we're gonna do it at Ag and in Taylorsville. So everybody make time adjustments if that's farther for you. And we'll know, we'll have a specific room every time there and. Right?
The Bonneville room, it's on the 3rd floor of the Taylorsville State Office Building.
So, unfortunately, we won't get to say good farewell to the Department of Health and Human Services. I mean, that was last month, I guess. So I don't think there's any other administrative business today. Following this, right afterward, they have the working group is going on right next door, so you can stay. That's starting at 5. So if you stay that long, then you can, jump in on that as well. So I guess we'll start with the updates from DHHS and UDAP. So, Rich, would you like to start?
Sure. Yeah, so since the last time we met, we had some legislative changes come in to be effective on May 6th. And but in April, we sent a notification to stakeholders to let them know that these were coming into effect. That went on April 21st. And we let them know about a few of the EBS software changes that were upcoming. And so since that time, obviously May 6th passed and we had some 2026 legislation that went into effect. And I'll give you a few examples of some of those enhancements that were made to the EBS software. First is the caregiver and legal guardian card applicants are no longer required to pay a fee or complete a criminal background check. So it has become easier for someone who is a caregiver or a legal guardian to receive a card that they can use to go purchase on behalf of their individual that they're caring for or their child. So that's a move there that has been made. Also, applicants in any role have the option to select tribal ID as their government issued photo ID type when they submit their application. Many individuals who have tribal identifications also have a driver's license, but some don't, and it's come up on a few occasions. And so the statute was modified, and that became effective on the 6th to allow for that to be accepted as a acceptable type of government issued photo ID. Also, there's now a legal guardian of a disabled adult. They may apply for a medical cannabis card. The statute is in the past has allowed, obviously, for a parent of a minor, but what about the legal guardian of an adult who for some reason is disabled to a point where they have a legal guardian who acts on their behalf and who also has a government issued photo ID who can act on their behalf. So we don't have a lot of those, but you know, a lot of times statutes are changed to help those who are the extreme minority, that there's just a gap in the statute. So that was addressed during the session, and it's now possible for individuals who are legal guardians for disabled adults to be able to apply on their behalf and receive a card for this disabled adult. So that individual can receive medical cannabis legally. So those are some examples of the software enhancements to the EBS. Also, we made some website enhancements. Those include some descriptions of the new caregiver and the legal guardian process. So to just summarize on our website, the new process that was made in the software because of the legislative changes. We've also updated our patient frequently asked questions to include information on what ID types are approved, so that. And then, yeah, so those are some of the website enhancements we've made. That gives you an idea of how we've moved on implementing the new legislation. The Center for Medical Cannabis presented at the Ogden Medical Surgical Society CME conference on May 14th last week. And I presented on some of the legislative updates. And then Dr. Matt McKiff presented on best practices for safe use of medical cannabis. There's about 25 medical providers who joined in person and some joined in line. And so these are individuals who, a lot of them don't participate in the program, and they're growing in their knowledge about the program. And we continue to make that a priority, and meeting medical providers in places where they are already going is a priority. So we've enjoyed doing that, and we were able to do that last Thursday. Also, the state, you may have noticed, has a new brand and logo. If you go to state websites, you'll notice that we'll show you a little bit about what that looks like. And DHHS was one of those. You've seen our old logo. It's still on our tags here. That's what it looks like. And so rather than there being like 60 different logos for different state agencies and different state offices, there is one state logo. And the primary objective of this was just to make sure that every citizen knows when they're interacting with the legitimate state of Utah, because sometimes it can just be confusing. There's so many state agencies and they all had different logos. So when you see that, you would know, oh, okay, this is the legitimate state of Utah agency. And yeah, so going forward, the department will use that, and UDAF, of course, will use that, but their version of it, where it'll say Department of Agriculture and Food, obviously. So anyway, that gives you an example of what it looks like. We've launched this last week by having our email signatures changed. So you may see that from some of our staff and some of our blast emails. They have the new logo right at the bottom. So don't be alarmed. The only thing that's changed is all state agencies are using the same logo. That's all that's, there's some other things that are changing over time. It's incremental. And by the end of the month, we'll have some additional changes made. And so it'll be incremental, but you're beginning to notice it now. Also, there is just an update about the integration of medical cannabis card information with the controlled substance database. So this project began a long time ago. A long time. As of April 30th, there are 113,202 active medical cannabis patient card holders. That's an increase of 1,100 from March. And then also, as of the end of the month, there are 1,191 recommending medical providers participating in the program. That's a small decrease of 6, but that changes quite a bit. And so, but yeah, it is a decrease of 6 from the month of March. And then there are 95 pharmacy medical providers or pharmacists that work at the different medical cannabis pharmacies throughout the state. And that's a decrease of 1 from the past month. So that gives you an idea of a few things that we've been monitoring during the past month. Are there any questions about any of the information that was shared?
The legal guardian, how is the legal guardian status verified? Do they have to show power of attorney or?
There's a legal document that will be uploaded. Yeah, it rarely happens, but anybody that has questions would be able to reach out to our office, and they're prompted to upload that if they fall into that group. It's a very unique group, but we've created a path for them to be prompted to upload that. Yeah. Okay, that's all.
My turn then. So a couple of updates from UDAP. So we have posted the new licensing board director positions. They're on the state website now, so please get the word out on those to anybody who would like to apply for them. There are 3 separate positions posted there. If you have any trouble finding those, please just reach out and we'll help get you directed there. We're really looking to get this big app and come full there. The DHHS is in process. We had the DHHS staff that will be coming over, come join us last week for the facilities and familiarize with the campus there in Taylorsville. It's great to see them there, and we're looking forward to having that transition plus completed by July, but we have till the end of the year. So we'll be doing the formal transition of them moving over to our offices in the first week of July. And then we have technically till the beginning of 2027 to complete that transition, but we don't plan to leave much for after the July transition. We're also getting ready to release the 17th pharmacy license. I don't know the process for getting that license out, so please be on the lookout for more information on that. unlikely that it'll happen before the next MCPAB meeting, but just wanted to get notice out there that it is coming so that people can prepare. Then we have some fee changes that will be coming up here starting on July 1. Most notably will be the patient fee that will be paid at the pharmacy will be going back up to the $3 fee as we discussed previously. And then we'll be making the change to the urban pharmacy license from 67,000 up to 75,000. Those will be for the Weaver, Davis, Salt Lake, and Utah County pharmacies. The rural pharmacies will be going down from 50,000 to 37,500. That will be every other county than those just listed. And then the courier home delivery license fee is going from 2,500 up to 3,000. And then the agent registration fee goes from 150 to 175 with a background, or from 100 to 125 with no background.
That's yearly, right?
And that's it for us.
Or the new licensing board, I know you guys said you just put out the like kind of applications for that. When do you plan to have that board filled? Can that take until the end of the year, or does that have to be in place before then?
We need to have that in place. We were hoping to have it in place by June, but hiring stuff is a little bit volatile with the state right now. So we're trying to get that completed as soon as possible. We do have to have those licensing board meetings fairly regularly for the licensees to make changes to their operating plans or for new licenses to come on.
And the current licensing board will just remain in effect until, so,
No, they.
all right, so hence the urgency. Okay, so that was the last meeting they had was their last meeting? Okay.
Will you remind at least me, if not other people, what the restricted new 17th pharmacy license are?
Yeah, essentially it has to be an independent operator entirely. No connection to any licensee in the state or the state.
They can't have a license in another state either?
No, completely independent.
Great, thank you.
I thought they could have a license out of state. So now I'm processing.
Yeah.
Hey, then I guess. We don't have any other questions about that, then we'll just move to item number 5. Draft administrative rules with. Cody, gonna tell us all about those.
Yeah, hopefully these ones are pretty short and sweet. So first I want to talk about R66-3, which is the quality assurance testing rule. Not a whole lot of changes to this one. The first one is actually down quite a bit to about the second page there. This was a request from industry. I think it was talked about last month at the MCPAB. That allows processors to test the derivative products in bulk for cannabinoids, and then the rest of the testing would need to be done after, or the final product test would have to be done obviously after packaging labeling is done. I think very similar to how the flour's been able to be for the last couple of years there. So that's really the big aspect. Like I said, that was an industry request to do that, so that is in there. There's a couple of cleanup aspects, obviously, the numbers change, some additions of the cannabis product being put into what is going to be line 16 in that same section, and the removal of plant, just clarifications and cleanups type of situation. I think really that is it for the testing one. Any questions or?
No, thanks for the discussion we had about that and, you know, working with industry to make that go.
Yeah, just to address any patient fears before we even hear them, there shouldn't be any concerns with the quality of the products. There's really not much of a difference. It's more of an administrative difference than any kind of different testing going forward.
Because it still undergoes adulterant testing at the final package stage, right?
Yep. So it should not affect product quality in any way.
And I'll just make this comment because I think it's important. Every single time we can streamline and help industry, it makes it potentially easier for us to think about pricing as well, because everybody knows it's not cheap to actually do this, despite whatever somebody might say. And so that helps. Things like that help us.
And patients end up paying the price for these products, so.
That's right.
The more we can take off the production side, the farther down those prices can go.
Yep.
Good to go on the next one.
I feel good, yeah.
The next one to talk about is R 66-6. It's the home delivery and courier rule. Couple of cleanups based on statutory changes with the DHHS were coming over to us. And some other cleanup and clarifications. First and foremost is in the definitions and the removal of DHHS, just because anymore that does not the need to reference them in very many of our rules anymore. So took that out. So which would change the number. There will be one definition left. As we go drop down to R 66-6-3, the home delivery service. Just again, based on last year's cleaning up of the rule language and things like that, anything that was in statute, we wanted to remove for the most part. There was some additions to the statute in one of the Senator Vickers bills, I think SB 121, that put some language about couriers and things in there. So that's why we removed this first line here under our 66-3, or sorry, 6-3, and then added this number 2 now, which is adding, and this is for clarification, so this goes completely against what I just said about removing language. There, we added language just because our pharmacy team was getting a lot of questions about pharmacies, if they needed to be a home delivery service, or if they could just do and have a courier do it without going the extra step. So we wanted to verify and clarify that, yes, in order to do any type of delivery, whether it's through a courier service or yourself, you need to get approved to be a medical cannabis or home delivery pharmacy there. So our team asked for that, just to completely clarify in that aspect. Let's see. Moving down to R 66-6 for the standards, security or storage and security procedures for the product that is unable to be delivered. So this actually caused us a lot of conversations after our last licensing board meeting. We had a courier that applied for it, and in their application said that there is no way that they was never going to be able to not deliver product within the same day and things, right? We all know we live in Utah, and you could be trying to get from Salt Lake to Provo when it shuts down, right? And we all know the wrecks that happen here. So we did want to put in there as far as future. And even for them currently is like you need to have some way to get product back to a safe spot in case that happens, you know, and worst case scenario, hopefully it never does, but we all know, again, as I mentioned, this is Utah. So always getting somewhere is never easy, especially during winter months or if you're living in school. So.
Cody, on that one, are you guys gonna give active couriers a period of time to update their operating plans and send out some type of notice that says by such and such a date, you have to update?
It'll probably be through like your renewal.
Okay.
We'll probably end up doing that way. So just along those lines, we've got Brady going through and Nessa and Nicole will be all updating all that stuff, especially as we go that way. So. Okay, moving down a little bit further, there was some statutory language that allowed couriers to hold it up to 14 days in statute there. So it used to be 10 there. So, and it used to be 10 business days. Our understanding is that once you go above 10 days, then it stops being business days and just becomes regular days, right? So 14 days and 10 business days, pretty much the same thing. But we did change that aspect. And I think there was just a couple of cleanups down in the violation aspect to say service standards versus delivery standards. So it says delivery service standards under number 1D. And that's pretty much for it for that rules. And I can say that we do have a couple more rules that will be coming out here with, so we got specifically R 66-2 and R 66-1. So the cultivator and the processor, when we sent some a request for some information to the entire industry, RMPs included. But the first one for the couriers is because, again, in SB 121, they broadened the ability and gave us rulemaking authority on remediation for growers and different equipment and things like that. So we wanted to get input from the industry first and foremost before we started penning that. And then secondly is the ability to put some terms on labels of the physiological effects of cannabis as well. So we wanted to, that's again, another reason to get out to the industry and again, including RMPs and everybody we can think of to get that type of information before we just start and get into that. There will be some clean things based on the audit last year. We're gonna do some definitions as far as violations and things like that, but nothing that's too major, just kind of put a broad definition of things in there for violations. But that'll be pretty much the only other changes we see in our current rules. Moving forward, DHHS rules will be moving over to us in the meantime as well, so we've been slightly working on that. And then we're putting together, with the help of DHHS employees right now, some rules on the grant for the $300,000 for the voucher. So a nonprofit can help patients purchase and that, so that's a rule that's being worked on currently. We'll get to you guys as soon as we can.
Okay, does anybody have any questions about those? Can we see if there's any questions online? Or comments? Okay. Then, we're just cooking through these meetings. That was supposed to take you 45 minutes.
What he also sings.
Yeah, so
I don't sing well, but.
Cody, you could just take, I mean, we're at 2:28. We have like 2 more agenda items. So if you wanted to sing or show us a talent, we have to be here till 5. So.
Probably.
Next week. Yeah.
Hey, that's right. I will say one thing. I am looking forward to the discussions we all have around what physiological conditions we're allowed to do. It feels like that's a really broad way to start describing that. And so I think that's going to warrant a lot of discussion, and because there's a lot of stakeholders. I mean, there's obviously an industry position that would be, it allows us to be able to better identify what we're trying to provide to patients. At the same time, I think we have to have, conversations around how you qualify something like that. So I'm interested in the rules.
Yeah, there will be quite a bit to work out there, but we did feel it was important for the benefit of the patients or to help them understand what they're taking.
Yeah, more information is good, and I think that's good for everybody, but yeah, there's some challenges.
It might be worthwhile to have meetings before now. We do have a timeline that we have to get our rules in place, obviously after statutory changes, but to meet with different groups of industry, maybe if this group wants to meet, maybe gets public input as well that way before we get to that point. So it just doesn't all base, conversation isn't all just based on the rules that get written right there, but maybe we can have all that kind of discussion beforehand and then.
Yeah.
I think that'd be really great.
I think so too.
I agree.
When are you guys, when are these due?
So I think we asked the input to come in by May 26th. So, yeah, so I don't know, based on I think we could have some meetings in June type of thing, but, or maybe even July. I mean, we do have until September, October to get those going, and I'm sure we could probably make an excuse as to why we didn't get that one in time, but just because of the.
I think we have time to maybe meet and talk about it. Let's figure that out. Because I do think that one's gonna matter a lot.
I think there will be a limited number of them, so enough that we could probably just come up with a list of things that are acceptable rather than just leaving it kind of nebulous.
Yeah.
Well, because I imagine most people, I mean, as you see on products already, how people are describing them, right? You have it's a pretty limited subset of what people are saying, right? Like it's usually energizing, calming, somewhere in between, right? I mean, it follows, for lack of a better, term, sativa indica hybrid, right? I know those terms are completely outdated and not accurate anyways, but that's generally what you see from the effects that people are describing. But I do think it will be useful to have a conversation, and also useful to have a conversation in light of, the federal rescheduling of cannabis, right? Because they're going to have a say on what is and what isn't a medical claim as well. But I think as long as we stay away from specific disease states, we're in a better position. But then again, you could think of, Cody and adjectives, I'm sure could come up in this too, right? So I do think that will be useful.
He hates adjective, actually.
Well, and one thing I want to make sure that we are very conscious of, I'm not a big fan of blacklisting things. I like whitelisting as much better. So an avenue, in the case that somebody does research and they find a specific condition that has the data that backs it, they should be able to create a product that lists that if the data supports that.
Yeah.
So
Indeed.
Yeah, I think part of it is just, and the department can chime in here too, is that you wanted people to be allowed to kind of describe what a patient may experience without that crossing the line into it becoming a medical claim. And I think that's why if your terms remain general enough, right, and speak not to a specific disease state, you should be better. So hopefully that can help guide the conversation, a little bit, because obviously you want to avoid anything that makes a specific claim that doesn't have the medical backing, not only because that's illegal to do, but also because you're gonna give a representation to a patient that may not match for them. And honestly, some of these physiological effects and stuff may not match for every patient. I think that's something to understand. Cannabis is super individualized as well, so.
Um,
Can I ask a quick question? Are those meetings gonna be also public? Cause that's why I'm here.
yeah.
Do you want to give comment on that?
Yeah, well, we can take public comment. We just tried online, but I didn't even ask if anybody wanted to talk in the room. Would anybody like to make public comment in the room?
I would love to get some feedback from you guys. I've spent the last year and a half trying to figure out the best way to help patients reduce friction in making decisions.
Can you state your name and just who you're with?
I'm here as what should I say, just a concerned patient that's seen good things from people using medical cannabis.
In your name, because she's gonna.
My name is Jeff Archuleta.
Okay.
And I've done some real serious research on what we can do to help patients make better decisions. And it started a chain reaction that's basically affected the whole ecosystem and how it can benefit everybody in the chain from seed to consumption. And so I'd love to talk with you guys sometime and just get some feedback and figure out kind of where things are at. Because I have my background is just consulting and figuring out problems and then trying to bridge gaps. And I realized that it really works. My particular ADHD and skill set does work well for this kind of problem. So I'd just like to meet with you sometime and just figure out what you guys have found are the biggest roadblocks right now or frustrations with just what patients are going through. And then also, you said something, this gentleman here, okay, this is my big concern has been that there are dynamic variables and static variables that have to do with what we're trying to align. And to me, there's, patients, as you mentioned, everyone's different. So the first challenge is it's really hard to say these are effects that will apply because everyone's got a unique personal cannabinoid code, right? The way that they interact and also just our moods, the mood we're in changes. So our chemistry, we're trying to line up with the plant chemistry for a particular outcome.
Right.
So I would love to just talk with you guys about that to see, I'd like to let you know what I found and what I've been working on at a time that it's appropriate. Because I think it could shed some light. What I'm hearing you guys say, I'm just like jumping up and down because like, oh.
Well,
on the same page.
we're gonna have that, we're gonna have that meeting coming up and I actually have a card. If you want to take that after the meeting, we can have a phone conversation, but we will let you know when that meeting is coming up and then we'll hopefully have those discussions coming up between now and the next meeting and maybe in the next couple meetings, figuring those out, but grab my card before you leave because Nanette and I and everybody here kind of works on that day to day as well. So
Thank you.
we'd love to have you involved. Our next one is cannabis rescheduling. And Trevor was awesome. He sent us out the final rule and the press release, and it looks like all of these are moving forward. I know there's, I think the meeting is June 29th, is that correct? And we'll know more all the time. So, and I think for me on the rescheduling, it brings me back to the board assignments. I think that as we move forward with this rescheduling, there's no doubt in my mind that I think Utah is better prepared than most states to be ready for this. We have a good medical program. I do think that we have some things that we need to work on and make sure that we're prepared for, as the federal government is saying that we can have a program like we have, and they, and they're going to accept that it's a medicine. So I think we're a long ways out from insurance, and for me, that's the biggest thing. I cannot wait until we can walk into a doctor, get a card, or not get a card, just skip a card and get a prescription and go into a pharmacy and purchase this medication. And so with insurance, and so the sooner that can happen, the better. And I want to make sure that Utah is ready for that for patients as soon as it can be. I want to just take this next 20 minutes to kind of talk about, again, rescheduling, what we see happening. I know Nareth I think he's on line. He was just at a conference where they really discussed this in Park City, and I wanted to give him a couple minutes if that's okay. I think I get to decide, so it's okay. And then we can have a discussion on that. But if we want to give, unless anybody else on the board has something to say before Nareth talks, then we'll let him talk first.
Just from a position of full transparency for the public and everybody else, I mean, we got access to basically the summation. Anyone can go look it up. But what are the main points that we feel like we're taking away from the final rule that came out? Does anybody feel bold enough or strong enough in the way that they interpret it to be able to say these are the 3 things we're looking out for?
No, but I think you do, Blake.
I would probably first defer to JD and then add some color commentary to it as well.
JD would like to defer to Brandon, so.
And I'm happy to discuss it, but I think we can hear from Nareth, and then I can provide any context beyond that.
Yeah. So Nareth, if you want to hop on and just say, who you're with and what, and the conference that you were just at, and then kind of just maybe 5 minutes, tell us what happened, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, guys, just checking, make sure my audio is okay.
You're on mute.
Is it me?
Check, microphone check. Just want to make sure. How's my audio coming through?
I say it's on Zoom. That might be. What was it? Sync Master, that worked.
Sync Master. It was the L that we use. Where
I thought we switched it to the TV or your computer.
Nareth, could you go ahead and speak? Okay,
Yep, microphone check. Check 1, check 2.
you can hear ya. Great, thanks. Sorry for that wait.
All right, sounds good, guys. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board. For transparency, I am part of a committee called the ACCM, which is the American Council for Cannabis Medicine. I've been part of this committee for the last 5 years now, and the main priority for that committee was to be the voice for the medical cannabis. So the only initiative for this group was this path towards Schedule 3. And as part of being this group, we've just had some really great connections into the administration and been able to at least have a little bit of a seat at the table when it came to this latest DOJ order that made some pretty clear definitions in terms of what is going to be considered Schedule 3. So I'll at least share some of the feedback that came out of that committee meeting in terms of the interpretation coming out of that DOJ rule. And the first thing I think to state is that two pathways for legal Schedule 3 medical cannabis. The first pathway is FDA clinically approved products. That is the pathway of Big Pharma. And the other legal pathway is state licensed medical programs. So that language was obviously purposely included in there to ensure that existing medical programs could continue to operate under the Schedule 3 guidelines, despite our products not being FDA approved. But it would allow those state licensed medical programs to effectively remove the 280E tax burden. So that would be implication number one that I think everybody is pretty clear on for the most part. And it only, again, applies to state licensed medical programs. So those adult use operators and those MSOs, a lot of those guys are scrambling to try to convert their adult use licenses into medical licenses. But every single one of those states that they operate in have different rules, regulations, and statutes that allow limited medical licenses. So luckily for us, every operator here in the state is now a federally legal Schedule 3 medical cannabis operator. And to Des's point earlier about our just standards and rules and regulations, a big reason why I was asked to be a part of this committee was to basically represent our Utah medical cannabis program. And I believe you guys have heard me state this before, but Utah is currently recognized as one of the best in class medical cannabis programs in the nation. In fact, some of our requirements and rules and regulations exceed that of what the DEA would actually require. So what that means for Utah operators is we're in a really good spot where we don't have to do a lot of things to be in compliance with federal law. So that's a kudos to our regulators, to our legislators that have been progressive enough to be ahead of this curve and be ahead of the federal government and actually make a medical cannabis program. So that should be a really validating and rewarding thing for everybody that's part of this committee and everybody that's involved in the program. So I think that's a huge win. So that's the biggest implication, 280E for operators. Every operator is going to have a different strategy on what they do with that 280E tax relief. And then I think the second big implication is DEA registration. So I would strongly urge every single Utah medical cannabis operator to register with the DEA. That essentially, registers us as a manufacturer that can dispense and manufacture and distribute these products. There is one little caveat in regards to how the DEA is involved. If we're not aware about the crop purchase program, where essentially the DEA has to buy back every single crop and sell it back and add a administrative fee. Don't know what that administrative fee is, but it's just an administrative thing that kind of happens. Product doesn't actually go anywhere or leave anywhere, but it's just an administrative action that would need to happen. The third thing that I think, really puts Utah in a prime position to, quite frankly, be a leader in the nation and be let's just say the gold standard for quality in the nation, is that state compliance will still control operations in the short term. I say in the short term because until the DEA, the FDA, DHHS, and all the agencies get their standards in place, which could take years, they will defer to state licensed medical programs. And because we already have some of the strictest testing standards, we're already going to be pretty much well above the bar of what the DEA might require. So those are the biggest implications. And I'd say probably the last biggest implication there is, and this is still a wild card, but there is, let's just say we should probably formally support that Treasury guidance that talks about back tax relief. It's been proactively rated to the beginning of this year, so all companies that are in state licensed medical programs should be able to receive this 280E tax relief backdated to January and throughout the rest of the year. So if that's not something that seems to look at, they should look at that immediately. And if you've already started paying those taxes in advance, it's a lot harder to get that money back from the federal government. And there is obviously talks and consideration about how far that back tax relief could potentially go, right? Federal government's not great at giving money back, but I think as an industry, even as a state, for us to be able to kind of rally together and support some of this back tax relief, I think that would obviously provide a lot of financial relief and reduce a lot of financial burdens for operators that are still struggling to make it in the positive. So those are the biggest implications that I think we can kind of confidently say, given the direction from that DOJ order. So I'll stop there because anything else I say would just be speculation. But I think the final comment that I want to make is Utah is incredibly well positioned to be a leader in the future of what a Schedule III medical cannabis world could look like. And I think it's up to us, as part of this industry and part of this program to decide, do we want to just sit and wait for the federal government to act, create rules, and things like that, or do we continue to be progressive as a board, still continue to be ahead of the federal government? Because so far we've been pretty right on a lot of things. A lot of things we need to correct and fix, like Des said. But more than ever, I feel really confident about being in Utah's medical cannabis program and the rules and regulations that are currently in place.
Thank you, Nareth. Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. Kind of wish we all would have went to that meeting that he went to in Park City, because it sounded like had a lot of really good information. But it was like 3 days, and I think you were supposed to like dress up for it, so.
Can I ask a question there?
Yeah.
Question for you regarding research. If you looked at the executive order, one of the imperatives was enhancing the ability to do research on cannabis and some of the cannabis derived extracts that didn't fit under the hemp designation. And my question is, now that producers in the state are going to be working as Schedule III operators in your own terms, what does that look like for collaborations with researchers? Are we going to be able to transport compounds that are non-hemp based using DEA 222 forms? Or is that outside of the current discussions at this point?
Thank you for that answer, Misty. That was a very big topic of conversation, and essentially, and this is actually a great example, because I think one of the members of the CMCR actually was trying to do this and trying to work with UDAF, and UDAF was actually open to doing this and providing product. But at the end of the day, those products do not come from a licensed DEA registered facility. Now,
Exactly.
any one of the Utah operators will be, so that completely changes the conversation now. So yes, that absolutely opens up the door for the conversations about researching real world products that are currently being used in the market. So I think that is a great opportunity for the state of Utah to get ahead of the curve. And if we already have DEA registered licensed facilities, we can do real research, real clinical studies on these products. And I would love nothing more than to be the pioneers and being front and center on that. And I would think a lot of people in this room would also want to be a part of that because of our passion towards cannabis as a plant. Without the real research, without the real data, to Blake's point earlier, all these claims that people may or may not try to make will just go unfounded, right? And that's something I think operators desperately want. We want the data and evidence to support what we already know, but we don't have the data to support the anecdotal evidence and data that we already have available. So yeah, I think that changes a huge conversation, and it should be very much a huge priority of this board and kind of what we talk about moving forward.
JD, would they have to have, like, would that be a time when they would, in order to transport anything about hemp, they would have to be registered as one of these DEA? So first and foremost, they have to register.
Yeah, so the federal government has given you 60 days from the date the order, the date the rule was published in the Federal Register, which gives you until June 26th to apply,
register.
to get your application submitted. Right now, they are currently only accepting applications for dispensaries, what we call pharmacies, and manufacturers. They have not yet set up a portal process by which you can register as a cultivator or as a distributor. Another thing to keep in mind is you may also qualify as multiple of those.
Right.
Pharmacies in the state of Utah will qualify as a dispenser and a distributor because they are allowed to transfer product between different pharmacies, right? So those are some things to keep in mind. So I'll just say that again for anyone in industry listening, you need to submit your application by June 26th to have the benefit of being able to register with the DEA and get some of these benefits that come out of the order. I know some folks have decided to wait and, prepare their application and wait to see if they get more guidance from the DEA. The DEA hasn't put out a ton of guidance. I've been working not only here in Utah, but across the country to register a lot of different dispensaries. And there's not a lot of guidance, but June 26th is a hard cutoff date for registering. They will open the portal soon for cultivators and distributors, so be on the lookout for that. The current forms that are online for cultivators and folks like that are not what you will use. Those are for the old kind of regime. So just keep that in mind. So just keep your eyes on the portal. And this is a question I have had, and I will ask UDAF, because in a state like Oklahoma has given some kind of conflicting guidance on the requirement to register or not. They initially put something out that said you can continue to operate without registering, and that was in relation to dispensaries. And then for producers, they said, no, you have to register in order to still be legal within the state. I've not seen other states go that route. Probably most notably, California has created a quick process by which you can get a medical designation. So I think a lot of states are trying to help this process. But I guess a question I have for UDAF is, do you all have any plans to put out any sort of, pronouncement or announcement regarding the requirement to register with the DEA or not?
No.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
So I would love to hear your opinion or anyone else's opinion on this. This is still a little bit challenging. So the DEA registration is not being the same as licensed by the DEA to have scheduled drugs. Those are two totally different issues. Just because you register with the DEA doesn't mean you can now start bringing codeine into your facility and start mixing your topicals with codeine or lidocaine or other things, right? And so the FDA often will cause or have people do registration for particular drug types and different things that you're working on. The DEA typically does that, and it's an enforcement group. And so a registration with the DEA, I don't know yet, but they basically have said that you can only play with anyone else who's registered. So if you go to the dance and you're by yourself, you will not be able to trade with anyone else in the industry. And so this is very interesting because they basically have stated that there could be importing and exporting if you meet certain conditions and all kinds of different things. But yet, if they're not registered or the DA recognizes that registration, you would not be able to do business with anyone. I don't know what that means. Does that mean if I don't register or everybody in Utah doesn't register that you can't sell to somebody still in Utah? I don't know. I don't know what the implications of some of this is.
Well, to add to that, registration is a broad term too, because there are various different registrations that are available through the DEA. In terms of, at least in the old system. So I think the logistics of this registration process is gonna need some clarification. And if it's not gonna be done, if transport, for example, isn't gonna be done through a Form 222, like it has traditionally been done, then how, for example, would we get compounds from registered, whatever that registration is? How will we get that from a Schedule III registered manufacturer, for example, to a research institution that has the appropriate licensing to do that research? So.
And I'm not against registration. I'm just saying, I don't know everything yet about this, but it has not followed the way that it has been done traditionally with medicine.
Well, I think that's kind of to what the point that Nerith was making is they've created two pathways here, right? If you want to be a traditional FDA approved, producer of a cannabis product, Epidiolex, Marinol, those types of things, there is a path for that, and you will continue to follow that path. This is a new pathway in which they're creating, which it is not altogether clear how everything is going to be handled. I think about the only clarity you have now is you have 60 days to register or to apply. for registration. That's about all the more that I think anyone knows or understands. I mean, my understanding is even the local field offices of the DEA don't know and have not been given much direction on what's going to, how this is going to transpire. So I think the only thing you know is by June 26th, you have to make a business decision as to whether you are going to apply for DEA registration or not. Based upon an order that has some clarity but lacks a lot of clarity. But there's nothing more that I've seen floating around. I've seen more questions than anything with this. That's about the only thing that's clear is you've got a 60-day period to decide if you want to register or not. And I believe the implications are in order to enjoy the legality from a federal perspective as a medical, as a cannabis producer, a medical cannabis producer, this is the first step that you have to take in order to do that. I think more answers will come over time. I'm sure the hearing that's scheduled for the 29th, which will not just conclude on the 29th, it will be a multiple day hearing, will address some of that. But I also believe it's going to have to address adult use cannabis unless the federal government plans to cut the cannabis plant into thirds and have medical, adult use, and hemp, and figure out how you keep one potentially Schedule 1, treat one as Schedule 3, and then whatever you do with hemp, which is going to become all illegal in November, right? So I don't think there are a lot of answers now. I think, again, I go back to the only answer I think that I see any clarity in is you got 60 days to make a decision as to whether you want to register or not. And I've seen, opinions about, but to what Blake was saying about, you can only play with other registered producers. There are questions in the application that ask you to specifically list who your suppliers are, right? So presumably there's going to have to be some sort of connective tissue between registered suppliers, dispensers, distributors, cultivators, and all of that. But that's not clear from the order. The registration application looks a whole lot like what the former world looked like, right? It's not like this has been, the pathways have been decided as near as I can tell, but like how it's going to be different in practice, I don't believe that's all been necessarily spelled out. I think that this is going to be a little bit like the cannabis industry's been since the beginning. Build the airplane while it's in the air.
And just for clarification, the Schedule 1 research licenses, you're also required to list who your suppliers are. So it sounds like it's
going to be similar but different.
Yeah.
That's probably a lawyer's answer, but I mean, that's going to be what it is.
So I think it'll take amending some licenses on that end as well.
Yeah. One last thing I'll say that encourages me about this is this idea of kind of federalism, right? Where the FDA the DEA and the federal government are recognizing that if you are following state law, it's going to essentially grandfather you in for the ability to be registered. And they're going to trust state regulators to mostly continue to govern this program. I am hopeful that will work on the FDA side of things as well, because I'm sure anyone, especially Blake and or Misty, can tell you that if full FDA compliance is required, the industry as it exists today will no longer exist. Cannabis as a plant medicine does not lend itself to the traditional FDA structure. And so I'm hopeful that they will recognize that as well. And there'll be some sort of limited involvement, i.e. DEA registration, maybe with the FDA, some sort of, stuff around, good manufacturing practices, those types of things, stuff that we probably already have that applies here, but not another full layer of regulation. I think because of the way we chose to legalize cannabis, or the way we chose to keep cannabis illegal at the federal level, it lends itself now to trusting the state programs to continue to operate the way they see fit with some layer of federal regulation. I'm hopeful that it doesn't try to come in and completely upend everything that's happened, because it won't work. And so hopefully this dual pathway is kind of a sign of what's to come. But yeah, if you're asking me, I think it's as clear as mud in some ways, and we're all going to get to learn as it goes along.
My one question that I have is, if we completely hate what they do, what can we do?
So this is.
Do what you've been doing since 2018, right?
This is one thing that I think Nareth gave a very good synopsis, but one thing that I think that he pointed out that was really good. States can still continue to have higher standards than the federal government on everything.
Yeah.
And that's the rules that ultimately apply. So the idea that we continue to move forward as a state, regardless of whatever the feds decide to do, is probably in the interest of not only the patients here, but also Utah in general. You know, Utah has a long history of being able to say, you know, we do our own thing for certain things, and that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, I mean, cannabis has been operating outside the federal law since what, 1996, when California became the first state to pass medical, right? So I don't think that many people have a significant fear as of right now about enforcement, although there has been an uptick in enforcement lately if you read the news, right? So it'll be interesting to see how it all kind of shakes out. But again, if you don't like what the federal government does, you just keep doing what you've been doing and, you know, run the risk of potential, you know, enforcement. But there is so much for them to unpack here. I mean, even the idea of, you know, your typical DEA registration, right? They would have to come to your facility, do a full inspection and all of those things. Tell me how they're going to have enough field officers and enough resources to go and inspect thousands of facilities, pour over thousands of documents. I think that is why, by nature of being a state licensed cannabis business, you're going to be given the benefit of the doubt unless you are, you know, egregiously lying on your registration or they find something like that. It's the state license itself that is going to give you this pathway. Now they have to figure out what to do with adult use. I hope that they will come to a very similar conclusion. Otherwise, you know, the people on the adult use side will, I think, probably just continue to be who they've been, right, and be in a similar boat to where medical cannabis was, you know, until just recently. But it's definitely something to keep your eye on because there's other changes happening too, right? For instance, the TSA very quietly now allows you to take medical cannabis on an airplane. That was announced late last month, right after this happened. I believe the firearm form has now changed, right? And the wording has changed. So keep your eye on those things because by virtue of the government, the federal government now recognizing medical cannabis as a medicine, as a Schedule III drug and no longer Schedule I, there's going to have to be changes that come with it. But I think it's also important to understand that it doesn't change everything. I've heard so many people, and even, you know, people that you would not expect to hear say these things, say, oh, cannabis was legalized. It was not. For a very narrow subset, it was. This does not change necessarily banking requirements, right? This does not necessarily change. There's still going to be criminal penalties attached to being a non, you know, authorized Schedule III producer and or possessor. So you just got to make sure that because this is a momentous occasion and a step in the right direction, it doesn't do, it's not full federal legalization. And anyone that's probably talked to me in the last few years has probably heard me say that, you know, descheduling is the ultimate answer here, but this is a step in that direction. And I think the federal government has gone far enough now for them to say, all right, we're trying to create a pathway for licensed producers and dispensers, but I'm sure they have an idea. I would hate to think that they have no idea where it's going to go, but it just hasn't been put on paper or put out in any sort of context. Like, for instance, even the IRS, you know, you would think with the change in the law, that whole no tax on tips would apply. Well, their rule they published at the end of last month still says, nope, cannabis workers are not, you know, eligible for no tax on tips. So it's pretty unclear as to what's all gonna happen. But again, I go back to the first thing I said. You have until June 26th to make a decision on whether you want to apply for registration or not. That's the one thing I know.
I don't know. I mean, we probably don't have to talk about it again next month, but I think July, we might have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also been a lawsuit that's been filed as well. So
I didn't hear about the lawsuit.
yeah, so I believe Kevin Sabat and Sam and maybe some other prohibitionists have filed a lawsuit to uphold the process. I know there's also been various bills. I don't know if recently, but over time, there's been bills to try to block rescheduling in the federal government. There's been bills that even one of our state representatives has signed on to block 280E relief, even if cannabis is rescheduled, right? So there's a lot of twists and turns left in this thing. But again, a momentous occasion. If nothing else, the federal government has finally had to make an admission that cannabis is a medicine. And there's a lot of people, not myself, but many, many people that have fought for years and years and years to get that admission. How it all ultimately ends up playing out, that's the devil in the details. And we just don't know. So I will leave it with the famous lawyer answer of it depends.
I love that.
I know you'll probably give me the same answer of it depends, and there's a lot to be done. If I'm understanding this correctly, and I've also kind of already seen it, a case is getting declined by the Salt Lake County District Attorney's Office based on this and waiting to see where it goes, where if law enforcement were to make an arrest of somebody who has cannabis in general, let alone medical cannabis and a firearm, that they are declining to prosecute already. With that being said, especially considering just possession of cannabis in general without medical cannabis authorization, do you see that making the umbrella bigger for law enforcement to be allowed to participate as patients as long as the state code changes?
I'd hope so, but I know at the governance working group meeting here later, they're gonna talk about, cannabis use by public employees. I know that's been a thorny issue in the state of Utah. I know there's a lot of things to consider, especially when it comes to law enforcement that you may not have to consider for, say, a different public employee. But I hope that this does increase access in general to cannabis as a medicine, for folks like Misty to be able to do more research, for Blake to maybe be able to make some more specific claims about the products that he produces, for people to not have to jump through all these hoops in order to get access to cannabis as a medicine that we talk about every month, right? And allow it to be treated more normally. But again, I am going to give you that same answer. It depends.
Hey, well, is there any public comment on this inside the room?
Can I ask just a couple questions?
Yeah, I think so. Just state your name, who you're with, and then you have 2 minutes.
Okay, I'm Jeff Archer, and I'm just someone who's engaged in trying to help the whole industry. And I've got some things I'm working on. Couple things I'm just wondering, how do companies like Moxie and Select work in this area, whether from other states? Does everything have to be produced here? So they're using their unique technology, or is it subbed out to people that are doing concentrate? That's something I've wondered, because I got to know Moxie when I was a legal patient in California many years ago. And when I saw it coming here, it's like, how did they do that?
I think I can maybe answer the legal portion, maybe Mr. can talk about some of the other aspects of it. But like those two products that you just mentioned, they are approved brands here in the state of Utah that have been approved by the Department of Agriculture. We put on that, they are manufactured completely in Utah by Select being Standard Wellness and Moxie being this wrong in the years. So I get those two mixed up type of thing, but I think there is some, because they also come from other states for the most part, right? That they're multi-state operators, that they have brought some of their brands as well as probably some of their knowledge and way of doing things to Utah as well.
To me, it was all about source material.
Yeah,
Because it's different
you guys want to talk more about the brand?
And again, I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but I
Well,
just,
right now we have to talk about rescheduling.
sorry.
So if we're going towards rescheduling, then yeah, if not, then we can talk about that after. Or we can have you could submit an agenda item and we can have it as an agenda item. And we can talk about it for 20 minutes.
You just.
Yeah, so yeah, if nobody else has any comments in the room, then we have any online want to make a comment. Justin.
Yeah, here I can. Thanks.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So since we've been chatting for a little while, I kind of taken notes on a few things that I wanted to make comment on. First thing is
Justin, can you introduce yourself and who you're with?
yes. So my name is Justin, Life Elevated Processing. We're the Hillier brand. Okay, so a couple of comments here. So the first thing so I've been doing some traveling recently out of state, interfacing with people there. Um, from what I'm being told is that the DEA registration is basically to allow avoidance of enforcement if the government decides to take some goofy stance on one way or the other, or that federal law enforcement within certain jurisdictions decides to take action. So that's one. The second one is you're starting to see a reemergence of medical programs in adult use states, basically to kind of capture this Schedule III designation. And then the third thing is that JD touched on was deferral to state programs. So as that federalism movement piece, the government is going to be deferring to some of the state programs. And as license holders here in the state, I'm wondering that if the federal government and the state regulatory bodies are collaborating on this, that then will UDAP be putting together or providing some guidance? I mean, we pay these costly license fees. Are you guys going to be putting together, some bullet point listing for how we move forward in this? If the federal government comes to you guys and says, okay, we're going to defer to you guys, do we file for the DEA, designation? Do we not? Do we look at some type of interstate commerce issues with other states? Because there's the other piece of this is, as we move forward, there are a number of states surrounding us that do not currently have medical cannabis programs, but we're then no longer precluded from crossing state lines under certain designations. Very likely there may be some potential where some of the providers in this state are either approached to provide products in states that are willing to accept and allow for a retail environment without having the cultivation piece or the processing piece. And if you guys have given any thought to that or what that potentially could look like.
Thank you, Justin. Your time is up, but I do want to hear if you guys have any.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a question that comes up.
there have been quite a few questions around this. Unfortunately, there really needs to be some action by the legislature in order to do anything. So there's going to be quite a bit that happen in this next session regarding the federal changes that will then implement afterwards.
Right.
And the direction we go will largely be, completely be directed by the legislature.
Right. So, still waiting. I guess for me, I'm just really ready to have some of these questions answered, but.
Yeah.
And then I'm also hoping that they're answered in the way I want them to be answered.
I think initially, as Brand said, that what happens within at least our state, I think most states it's gonna pretty much stay unchanged, and there's decisions to be made by our operators on maybe the hopes and dreams that it's going to expand the market, maybe, right? But that's a decision there. And then, like, obviously, if you're gonna be DA registered and you want to possibly go to other states with it, like, you're gonna have to be able to send that to another DA registered group, right? Is what it sounds like how it's right now, and I think there is a lot of holes in it, even with the current rule they did, so, we're gonna have to wait and see on some of that stuff, but for the most part, I think from our standpoint, there's not gonna be any changes, initially until it's either forced, either by legislature or by DA. I think they're gonna let us kind of do what we need to, and then, but the, personal decisions of operators will kind of be the other thing that we can start to look into on what that's gonna do outside.
But we don't have to worry about interstate commerce. It will be easy for Utah to say, we're only allowing product in our state that meets a certain standard.
Anytime the word interstate commerce is thrown around, it's never easy.
It's never easy, but as long as we hold everybody the same standard, usually that makes it a little easier, right? Out of state versus and in state, as long as everybody's held that same standard, then that usually makes at least it legal.
Well, it doesn't make me feel better that everybody chuckled because I'm really.
There are some legal challenges.
Yeah, no, there will be lawsuits on both sides to expand interstate commerce and to restrict interstate commerce,
Yeah.
right? You're gonna have those that like the market the way it is, that are gonna fight against it, and you're gonna want those that want, avenues. And there are already state legislatures that have passed trigger laws that if interstate commerce ever becomes legal, they're gonna be able to ship it across the country. So interstate commerce will become a reality at some point in all of this. But again, a lot of it's gonna be tied up in do you check the right boxes to be able to do interstate commerce? I mean, I know there's people that already are talking about international. And then people say, are you ready for EU GMP? Because that's different than American GMP. And if you've seen those facilities and what that requires, that's a really hard standard to meet, right? So yeah, all those things are going to happen. But again, I'm sure there's been conversations, but if anyone has this all like mapped out and lined out and ready to implement anywhere in the country, I'd be very, very surprised. I mean, we knew the pronouncement from the Oval Office came, right? And they signed an executive order, but I don't think a lot of people, knew exactly when it was going to drop, and it's not even been yet like a full month since the final rule came down. So there's a lot to decide, and I'll be interested to see how the legislature here decides to handle it, because we are such a limited license state. We do have requirements that other states may not have. And so it'll be interesting to see how they deal with all of those issues.
To that point, and to what Cody said, I don't think the state's gonna take a step backwards on synthetics or any of those type of things. The bar that we're setting is pretty high, which could severely limit people's ability to participate into a market no matter what happens there.
And that's my concern, is I want to make sure that we can keep those things out.
Yeah,
So far, I was pretty happy to read, at least in what I've seen from the ruling or whatever you want to call that they're still following the state's
Yeah.
guidelines for now, and we can enforce those regardless, at least for now. And that's a really good thing for us, because I do believe that there's some pretty bad product out there that is not meeting the quality standards, even in the states that are where they're being produced, because they're not being tested properly, but they certainly wouldn't meet our quality standards.
Yeah, it'll likely be figured out in a courtroom.
That's what I'm afraid of.
That's likely where it's gonna be figured out. Yeah, and and interstate commerce and the commerce clause and dormant commerce clause and all that fun stuff, it usually doesn't, usually people aren't happy with those decisions, so it may even require the United States Supreme Court to weigh in at some point on this stuff. But yeah, interstate commerce for some is a boon, for some it's scary, right? It just depends on which side of the ledger you're on. Multi-state operators, we're gonna love the concept of, potentially love the concept of interstate commerce, but they might also have reasons to not like it in certain places where they operate. And, your single state operators may feel very threatened by it, but they may also think that they would love to send their product to other states, where maybe there's a higher demand for it too, so.
Okay, well, that's so much more clear. Thank you, guys. We're gonna go on to basically our last agenda item, and says it's gonna take 40 minutes, 45 minutes. We could potentially take more. We've spent the last couple months talking about, our mission and vision, and we've created these committees. I sent out an email with committee assignments, and I was happy that everybody was able to get either their first or second committee that they wanted to be on. Today I want to set up the structure of those committees. What those committees are going to be looking at, and how they're going to be bringing the information back to the board. And then hopefully from here on out, we're going to have very different, hopefully more productive, more robust meetings. I'm really hoping that putting people in their specific skill set and then having them report back is going to be good for us and also good for the working group. So, with that, I think maybe we do get if everybody knows what committee they're on, I have them on my phone here, or you do too. So, if we just want to go through, we have our patient access, industry, research, and then policy and rules will be the committee chairs, if they're not already on. So if we just want to go through the patient access, that would be me, Cami, and Melissa, which, by the way, Melissa is here, everyone. You want to say hello? Welcome. We're so glad you're here in person. And you said you're going to be taking the drive maybe every other month. That's crazy, but I appreciate that. Because that's how it's 6 hours for you.
4.5 if you go to speed limit.
Which she does, so no worries there.
Very fast, yeah,
Um,
especially through CMD.
Exactly, yeah, yeah, even if there's, and 9.5 hours if there's traffic.
There
So,
you go.
or
snow.
snow, yeah, just skip winters, just Zoom winters. But, so if we just wanna go through each one of these, we can talk about what they should be talking about. And then also we just need to kind of talk a little bit about how they're gonna interact on policy and rules, so. If, I mean, I've been doing the patient access thing now for a lot of years. So I know some of the things that we end up talking about and covering, but I would love to hear from the board on what things they feel we talk about are important to be put on the patient access committee. And we can just go around the room and everyone can state their name and what they love to do and what they think should be on the committee. I love it when everyone's quiet. Well, I'll start. I feel like one of the big things that the patient access committee needs to look at is we still have 55% of patients that are not purchasing in the state. And we know that the reasons are cost, price, and the price to get the cost to get the card and the price at pharmacy. And is it still the cost to get the card is still a little bit above the price of the pharmacy, or is that, or am I backwards on that?
The price of a medical cannabis card visit?
Yeah, because at one time that was
The
the
survey we had, is that
Yeah,
what they're
the
referring to?
number one reason, and
They
then
were
second
really
was
close.
cost of the pharmacy, yeah, they were
Right.
very close. And so I think that those, and in a lot of what I was saying is, Utah is, kind of the pioneers in medical cannabis, in the medical cannabis program. You can't talk to somebody outside of Utah that doesn't bring up somehow that we've done it right, but we're still missing the mark on patient access. We're also not behind other states in this, like every medical state deals with about this amount of patients shopping outside of their program, just in medical cannabis states. So it's not an uncommon thing, but that's what we're still dealing with. And I do think that the patient access committee, that needs to be one thing that we look at and expect that the state work with us to find ways on how to fix that. We could fix that one problem and get those 55% of patients in the program, we could. And I'm not saying like we need to go find 55% more patients to use cannabis. I'm saying we already have them. We already know they're using it. They're just not shopping here. If we could get them to shop here, we could drive down cost for every patient in Utah. And so, huge thing for me, that's probably my number one in the patient access committee would be patient access. So, if anybody else wants to add anything to that,
I think with the patient access subcommittee, you guys are in a unique location to be able to get feedback from patient population.
Yep.
So, communication, like bi-directional communication is gonna be essential. And how do you work out those logistics? Like, how do you work with the patients to identify the gaps?
Right.
Whatever gap that may be, whether it's pricing, access to certain products, access to different administration routes, any of those things. Many times patients think of things that our small group can't always think of, so how do we get that information?
Well, and I want to add to these committees, I want to add members of the public. I mean, we have to be cautious with how many board members we have on each of these committees, but I would love to see each of these committees add members of the public to bring that.
So Desiree, it may make sense. Rather than just having us all sort of formally say to you, this is what I think your committee or my committee should be doing. It makes sense probably in the next meeting, MCPAB meeting, to have a report from the chair of what is discussed on the committee and what they're gonna be working on moving forward.
Yeah,
Because that will probably be an easier way than like, let's brainstorm everything we can do, because we did a lot of that in our last meeting and look, I think it was productive. I'm not gonna say it wasn't productive, but now we've assigned committees, people are on committees. Now it's probably time to start getting some committee work and let's get the first agenda items associated with committee reports. And that could be the next committee report is, this is what our goals are, these are the next 3 things we're working on. The other thing is the strategy of if you want to bring public people onto your committee, you can talk about how you're going to do that and what that looks like. Because sometimes that's appropriate, and sometimes it's not, it just depends on what your goals are for those particular committees.
and we do have, I mean, one of the things about our timing today is we could actually, I mean, I think everybody's planning on being here for the next hour. We could even close the meeting now and we could break off into smaller groups and just chat about that for an hour.
I think there's value in that.
And so, and I'm 100% fine to do that. I just don't want anybody upset that we're not doing it on record.
Well,
If
it
not
will
in
end
court.
up on record, it just, the actual internal committee meeting we have ourselves is not.
Right.
Right, but they'll get to hear the outcome of every one of those meetings as they give a report from the chair in as an agenda item in the MCPAB meeting.
Well, would you like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion. Well, if there's anyone who wants to make comments out there in the public, or we ought to do that before we wrap up, but if we're done, then I'll make the motion to adjourn.
We do have a person online, yeah, let's take a public comment from online.
I think she had her hand up during the rescheduling conversation.
I had my, just because I didn't want to like miss being commented, but the committee is what I wanted to talk about. My name's Sarah. I'm a recent move from California, and you were talking about adding members of the public to the committees. I think if you want to open access and research, you get a representative from each of the qualifying conditions and put them on committees. You can go to the support groups and find the person who runs that support group and ask them if they want to be on the committee and represent. I think getting out that type of access is how you do that. And let's see here. If you also like focus more on the results, I think that the lack of data being collected is just atrocious in California. I know I just sat there and was like, we have 7 million patients on trial right now and we have no collected data. So I would try to go to support groups and get data and collect that, because that is how you also open access. There's 750 people with epilepsy cards in Utah, but there's 30,000 people with epilepsy in Utah. That's 29,250 people that should be trying this, that at least half of them probably don't respond to treatment and should be trying this. I think that if you start letting the patients in on it, they will take over and they will make it successful. That's just how that kind of works, because the results will show themselves what they are. I think you guys are doing a great job too. I took part in the California SB 420, which was how we got legal cards in California and storefront dispensaries. And it has just gone crazy there because of adult use. Medical has stopped, the innovation has stopped completely, and that's been really sad. And that's all.
Thank you, Sarah. Can you say your name, your full name, please?
Yeah, Sarah Stevens with a V.
Okay, is there any public comment in the room? Oh, then, Blake, what do you?
I motion to adjourn.
I was gonna say, I'll volunteer as a member of the public to join a committee.
We will talk after, in 1 minute after. So Blake motions to adjourn. Do we have second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Because we have to do that, but. Hey, we are adjourned. And now if we could just get into our committees.
You're welcome, agencies.
Yeah.
You'll get an hour back.
Yeah, go take a nap.
Yes, time.
We'll sit out in